Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. If someone had told Calder Rowe that the night would change everything, he would have laughed it off. Nothing dramatic ever happened on Thursdays. Thursdays were leftovers, laundry half-folded, and the low hum of exhaustion settling into the walls of their suburban Ohio home. Yet, that evening, standing barefoot in the kitchen with a juice-stained dish towel over his shoulder, Calder felt something shift, quietly, almost politely, inside his chest. "Can you watch the kids tonight?" Lila asked, not looking up from her phone. Calder glanced at the clock above the microwave. 6:18 p.m. "Watch them," he repeated. Yeah. I thought we were all staying in." Lila finally looked up. She smiled, quick and light like a reflex. "Plans changed. I need to get out for a bit." That should have been normal. Parents needed breaks. Lila had been restless lately, always pacing, always scrolling, always somewhere else even when she was right there. Calder had told himself it was stress, or motherhood fatigue, or the way time slowly pressed people flat without asking permission. But then she added, "I'm meeting someone." The words landed softly, yet wrong. Calder blinked. "Someone? Who?" "A friend," she said too quickly. "From work." She worked in marketing for a mid-sized logistics company. He'd heard about her co-workers for years, complaints, inside jokes, stories repeated until they lost their shape. This name, though, didn't come with a name. "Okay," Calder said after a pause. "Dinner?" Lila shrugged. "Maybe. Don't wait up." She walked past him toward the stairs, already tapping at her phone. Calder watched her go, noticing things he hadn't before, or maybe noticing them differently. Her hair was down, styled in loose waves she never bothered with for grocery runs. Her perfume was stronger than usual, sharp and unfamiliar. Upstairs, a drawer slid open, then closed, then footsteps again. When she came back down, she was wearing a black dress Calder hadn't seen in years. The one she used to wear before kids, before bedtime routines and sippy cups. "You look nice," he said automatically. "Thanks." She grabbed her purse. "I'll be back late." "Late how?" She hesitated, just a fraction of a second. "Don't know. Depends." Calder nodded, though something tight coiled in his stomach. "Text me?" "Sure." She kissed the top of his head, not his lips, and was gone. The door closed. The house exhaled. Calder stood there for a moment, listening to the faint sound of her car pulling away. Then he shook his head, as if to physically dislodge the unease. "Daddy!" 4-year-old Miles yelled from the living room. "She's touching my Legos!" Calder forced a smile and went to intervene. Later, after baths and bedtime stories, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet again, Calder sat alone on the couch with his phone resting on his thigh. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. 9:12 p.m. No text. He told himself he was being ridiculous. Lila had a life outside the house. He trusted her. They had built something together. 8 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, a routine so familiar it sometimes felt invisible. Still, when his phone buzzed, his heart jumped. Lila. Still out. All good. That was it. No heart emoji, no miss you, no explanation. Calder typed back, "Okay, kids are asleep." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. He didn't sleep well that night. He dreamed of standing in a crowded room, calling Lila's name while everyone else stared at him like he didn't belong there. The next morning, Lila came home just before sunrise. Calder was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone cold. He hadn't planned to wait up. He just couldn't turn his mind off. The front door clicked open. Lila stepped in quietly, heels in her hand. She froze when she saw him. "Oh, you're up." "Yeah," he said. "You okay?" "Fine." She avoided his eyes, setting her purse down. "Just tired." Calder studied her face. Her makeup was slightly smudged, like she'd rubbed her eyes too hard. There was a faint redness on her neck. Not lipstick, he told himself immediately. Just irritation. Heat. Anything else. "Did you have fun?" he asked. She paused. "It was nice. Nice." She went upstairs without another word. Calder stayed at the table long after he heard the shower start. That day, he couldn't focus at work. Calder was a data analyst. Numbers, patterns, logic. He believed in explanations, causes and effects. His mind kept circling the same, small, impossible question. Why hadn't she just said dinner with a coworker? That night, and the next week, it happened again. "Can you babysit Friday?" Lila asked casually on Tuesday, scrolling through her phone. "Babysit," Calder swallowed. "Sure, same friend?" She didn't look up. "Yeah, this time." She wore red. Calder didn't say anything. He didn't accuse. He didn't ask to come along. He told himself that marriages survived worse than a few unexplained evenings. But something inside him had started to watch. He noticed how she angled her phone away when texting, how she smiled at the screen in a way she hadn't smiled at him in months, how she showered immediately after coming home late, even when she claimed she was exhausted. On the third Friday, as Lila rushed out the door, Calder caught a glimpse of a name on her phone when it lit up. Evan. She tilted the screen away instantly. "What?" she asked sharply. "Nothing," Calder said. "Drive safe." The door closed. Calder stood there, heart pounding, replaying the moment over and over. Evan. Not a woman. Not a group chat. A single name. That night, after the kids were asleep, Calder did something he'd never done before. He opened his laptop and began to pay attention. Not to prove anything yet. Just to understand what was happening in his own house while he was babysitting. And for the first time, the thought formed clearly, fully, and terrifyingly in his mind. What if this isn't a misunderstanding at all? Calder had always trusted patterns more than people. People lied, sometimes to protect themselves, sometimes out of fear, sometimes just because lying was easier than explaining the truth. Patterns, on the other hand, didn't care about feelings. They existed whether you acknowledged them or not. And once Calder started looking, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Lila's late nights became predictable. Every Friday, sometimes Wednesdays, always with the same vague explanation. Work friend, marketing drinks, networking. Never names, never details, and never an invitation. Calder stopped asking. Instead, he observed. He noticed that on the days she went out, she barely spoke to him. Conversations were functional. "Did you pick up milk? Miles has soccer. Don't forget Ava's lunch." Emotional distance disguised as efficiency. When she came home late, she smelled different. Not perfume, something sharper. Soap, maybe. Men's cologne, his mind whispered once, cruelly, before he shoved the thought away. Still, his chest tightened every time. One Wednesday afternoon, Calder came home early. His manager had let him off after a client call was canceled. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lila's car was in the driveway. He stepped inside and heard her voice upstairs. Laughing. Not a polite laugh. Not the tired half-smile she gave him these days. A real one. Calder froze at the bottom of the stairs. "That's not fair," Lila said, her voice light. "You know I can't just—" A pause. Then softer. "I miss you too." Calder's heart slammed against his ribs. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just listened as footsteps crossed the bedroom, the sound of a door closing. A phone call. She came downstairs 10 minutes later and startled when she saw him. "Oh, you're home early." "Yeah," Calder said evenly. "Who were you talking to?" Her eyes flicked, just once, to the stairs. "Work, you know, client stuff." He nodded. That was the moment something fundamental broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. That night, After she fell asleep, Calder lay awake staring at the ceiling. His thoughts weren't racing anymore. They were slow, deliberate. If he confronted her now, she'd deny it. If he accused her without proof, she'd make him the problem. If he ignored it, he'd lose himself. So he chose the only option that made sense. He waited. Calder didn't snoop at first. He hated himself even for considering it. But suspicion has weight, and eventually, it presses you into decisions you never thought you'd make. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. Lila left her phone on the kitchen counter when she rushed upstairs to shower. It buzzed once, then again. Calder stood there, staring at it like it might explode. He told himself he was just checking the time. The screen lit up. Evan. Last night was hard to walk away from. Calder felt like the air had been punched out of him. He didn't open the message. He didn't scroll. He didn't touch anything else. He locked the phone and stepped away, hands shaking. That sentence replayed in his head over and over. Hard to walk away from. Not work. Not networking. Not dinner. Her. For the next few days, Calder moved through life like a ghost. He packed lunches. He drove the kids to school. He nodded at coworkers. He even laughed at something his boss said. Inside, he was cataloging evidence. He checked bank statements. Nothing obvious. But cash withdrawals on nights she went out. Small amounts. Careful. He checked the shared calendar. Events deleted. Then re-added with vague labels like dinner or meeting. He checked her social media. No posts, no tags. But Evan existed. Marketing manager, divorced. One kid, part-time custody. His profile was public. Calder stared at the photos longer than he should have. Evan was tall, athletic, smiling in a way that felt infuriatingly easy. The kind of man who looked like he'd never had to beg for attention. Calder closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Maybe it's emotional, he told himself. Maybe nothing physical has happened. But then came the babysitting. Friday? Lila asked, already reaching for her purse. Calder looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how comfortable she was with the lie. Sure, he said. Have fun, she paused. You're okay with this, right? The question wasn't concern. It was testing boundaries. I trust you, Calder said quietly. The lie tasted bitter. That night, after she left, Calder did something new. He followed her. He waited 10 minutes, then grabbed his keys and drove a few cars back, keeping his distance. His hands were steady on the wheel. His heart was not. Lila didn't go downtown like she usually claimed. She went to a restaurant near the river, intimate, dimly lit. Not the kind of place co-workers went after long days. Calder parked across the street. He saw Evan before he saw Lila. Evan stood when she walked in, smiled, hugged her. Too long, too familiar. Calder watched as she laughed, touched Evan's arm, leaned in close. The world narrowed. He didn't go inside. He didn't cause a scene. He didn't cry. He sat in his car and recorded the time, the place, the date. Then he drove home and put his kids to bed. When Lila came home later that night, glowing, she found Calder sitting at the kitchen table again. You're up a lot lately, she said lightly. Just tired, he replied. She kissed his cheek. This time, he didn't pretend it felt normal. Calder knew now, but knowing wasn't enough. He needed the truth, complete, undeniable, impossible to twist. And in the back of his mind, something else was forming. Not anger, not yet. A plan. Calder stopped pretending everything was fine, not outwardly. He still packed lunches, still showed up at school events, still answered Lila's questions with calm, measured words. But inside, the part of him that had once hoped this was all a misunderstanding had gone quiet. Hope had been replaced by certainty, and certainty demanded action. He didn't rush. Calder had learned that people revealed the most when they believed they were safe. So he gave Lila exactly that: comfort, routine, and the illusion of control. He even volunteered to babysit, without being asked. Go, he told her one Thursday evening when she hesitated by the door. You've been stressed. You deserve time. Lila studied him, suspicious for a heartbeat. Then relief softened her face. Thank you, she said, and meant it. Calder watched her leave, wondering how easily gratitude replaced guilt. That night, while she was gone, he logged into the family tablet, still synced to her accounts. He hadn't touched it before. Crossing that line felt permanent. There were messages this time. Not all of them. Just enough. Inside jokes, late-night confessions, references to moments Calder had unknowingly enabled by staying home with the kids. I hate lying to him. I never meant for this to happen. But I feel alive with you, Calder read, until his hands stopped shaking. He didn't screenshot. He didn't forward. He didn't confront. Instead, he closed the tablet and exhaled slowly. Now he knew not just that she was cheating, but how. Emotionally first, physically later, justified by loneliness, enabled by his trust. That mattered, because it told him exactly who she had become. The confrontation happened 2 weeks later. Calder planned it carefully, not theatrically, but deliberately. The kids were at his sister Mara's house for the weekend. Lila thought he'd arranged it so they could reconnect. In a way, she was right. They sat at the dining table, candles lit, half-eaten pasta cooling between them. Something's changed with you, Lila said, swirling her wine. You've been distant. Calder looked at her for a long moment. Do you love him? He asked. The glass froze midair. What? Evan, Calder said calmly. Do you love him? Color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. Calder reached into his pocket and placed his phone on the table. He didn't unlock it. He didn't need to. I followed you, he said. I saw you together. I read the messages. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. You spied on me, she whispered. No, Calder said. You invited me into it every time you asked me to stay home so you could leave. Her eyes filled with tears, not of regret, but panic. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said. I was lonely. You were always working. We stopped seeing each other. Calder nodded slowly. So you replaced me. That's not fair. It's accurate. She stood, pacing. I never meant to hurt you. I just needed something for myself. Calder felt the last thread snap. You didn't need something, he said quietly. You took it. And you took it from our family. She cried then, real tears. Apologies poured out, confused, tangled, desperate. Calder listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, I'm filing for divorce. The word landed hard. You can't just... What about the kids? I'm thinking about them, he said. For the first time in months. She reached for him. He stepped back. There's more, Calder added. Her breath hitched. I know about the weekends away, he said. The hotel in Columbus. The lie about the conference. She stared at him, defeated. I kept records, Calder continued. Dates, messages, locations. I don't need revenge, but I won't be made the villain in this story. She sank into her chair. What do you want? She whispered. The truth, Calder said, and my dignity. The divorce was ugly, but not chaotic. Calder filed first. He documented everything. Lila's lawyer tried to frame it as a mutual drift, but the evidence spoke louder. Custody was shared, but structured. Trust was gone. The kids adjusted slowly. Calder made sure they never saw the worst of it. Lila moved out within a month. Evan didn't last. Calder heard through mutual circles that once the secrecy was gone, so was the excitement. Evan didn't want responsibility. Lila didn't want to be alone. Funny how that worked. The revenge wasn't loud, Calder didn't expose her publicly. He didn't yell. He didn't poison the kids against her. Instead, he did something quieter and far more permanent. He rebuilt himself. He changed jobs, started lifting again, took the kids camping, laughed more freely than he had in years. And one afternoon, months later, when Lila saw him laughing with someone new at a school event, someone calm, kind, and fully present, she understood. Not everything broken stays broken. Some things are simply replaced. The strange thing about endings, Calder learned, was how quietly they settled in. There was no dramatic final argument, no shouting match in the driveway, no moment where Lila begged him to stay or he slammed the door behind him. Life simply rearranged itself, piece by piece, until the shape of his days no longer included her in the center. The divorce finalized in early spring. Calder remembered the date not because it hurt, but because he felt light, like he'd been holding his breath for months and had finally exhaled. He left the courthouse alone, got into his car, and sat there for a minute with his hands on the steering wheel. The sky was pale blue, the kind that suggested possibility without promising anything. That was enough. Co-parenting was awkward at first. Lila tried to be friendly, too friendly. Texts about the kids slipped into small talk, comments about memories they shared, jokes that used to belong only to them. Calder didn't bite. He kept everything polite, brief, focused on the children. Boundaries weren't punishments. They were protections, and he needed them. Once, during a pickup, Lila lingered by his car. "You seem different," she said softly. "I am," Calder replied. She nodded, eyes lingering on him. He was in better shape now. Not just physically, though that was obvious, but in the way he carried himself. Shoulders back, voice steady. No apology in his posture. "I miss us," she admitted. Calder didn't answer right away. Then, honestly, "I don't." That was the last personal conversation they ever had. The kids adjusted in their own way. Miles asked fewer questions than Calder expected. Ava asked more. Calder answered carefully, truthfully, without cruelty. He made sure they knew one thing above all else. They were loved, and none of this was their fault. On the weeks they stayed with him, the house felt fuller, louder, warmer. Calder cooked more, burned some meals, laughed at himself. He learned that peace didn't mean silence. It meant honesty. The final, quiet twist came months later. Calder ran into Evan by accident at a grocery store. The recognition was instant and uncomfortable. "Calder," Evan said, stiff. "Hey," Calder nodded. "Evan." They stood there, two men in the frozen food aisle, the past hovering between them like condensation. "I just want to say," Evan began. "I never meant to—" Calder raised a hand. "You don't owe me anything," Evan blinked. "I don't?" "No," Calder said. "You showed me who my wife was. That mattered." Evan swallowed. "It didn't work out." "I know." Calder picked up a bag of frozen vegetables and turned away. And just like that, the last thread dissolved. A year after the divorce, Calder stood in the same kitchen where it had all begun. The house looked different now. Lighter colors, new furniture, different energy. The kids were in the backyard, laughing. Calder poured coffee and leaned against the counter, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Contentment. Not because he'd won, but because he'd chosen himself without becoming bitter. That, he realized, was the real revenge.